So what motivated you with really young kids? What motivated you to give up your personal time? Because that's what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, I've risked everything I have to do this. And people go, oh, yeah, yeah, I got a ton of money. No, no. I've given everything I have to set up this forum that we're in right now, Free People Radio. What put you over the line, man? What would, because I want the people in the audience to relate to it.
Yeah. Well, tyranny. Tyranny. In 2020, I saw the executive branch of the state of Minnesota and Tampon Tim, Tyrant Tim, Tim Walz, try to put his thumb down on the Minnesota citizens and business owners and tell them that they weren't essential. Told people like me that's just trying to raise a family that I shouldn't be working. He used government agencies to come into businesses, arrest citizens, hijack their business license, throw them in jail, use the attorney general to prosecute them. That's what motivated me.
So I want to say this back, make sure I got it. During the COVID era in Minnesota, the Democrat governance here deemed many businesses non-essential and shut you down.
Absolutely. And I fought that tooth and nail. I'm not going to let a tyrant tell me I can't provide for my family. And I wasn't going to put up with it. So I got involved, like you suggested earlier. I started showing up to my BPOU. I became a delegate.
Okay, wait, slow down. For the people that are outstate in Minnesota, our basic unit of organization is called a BPOU, a basic political operating unit. These are generally associated in Minnesota with districts that are called Senate districts, but there's county BPOUs, and you're in a Senate district BPOU, correct?
Correct.
And that's Senate District 58.
Correct.
And you're on the A, A,
B side.
B side. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what cities are in that B side?
Quite a bit. So there's a lot of them. So I'm not going to name them all because if I name them all, might miss one. But my district goes as north as Coates,
Okay,
as east as Ravenna,
okay,
which is the Wisconsin border, South Hastings,
okay.
to as south as Northfield Township, and then as far west as Farmington. So
Wow.
it encompasses all that in between there.
And just to let everybody know what politics is all about, what Drew is saying is he got motivated because he was tyrannically constrained from taking care of his family, and he wasn't willing to put up with that. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, interestingly, because I'm in the tire business, I am an essential business. So what drove me over the edge is that electioneering down in Georgia. And I just said, man, I sat there, I'm pretty good at math. I sat there with all those counties and looking at all the polling trends. And I said, surely President Trump's going to win Georgia. And when he lost, my head blew off my shoulders. And I said, man, I can't just sit back anymore. So we went in the same year. That was 2020 for me too,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well, and then that snowballed in to the election in 2020, right? Because I saw everything that happened. I'm quote unquote an election denier, whatever that means.
I had Randy Sutter in CD3. He's retiring. He was the head of CD3. And was doing a thing, I don't know if you ever heard of it. I was doing a thing up here called the Master Classes. And for those of you who are going to say it was Masonic, no, it's musical. We have these master classes in the music world. And I thought, I'll put on these master classes and I will increase the number of Republicans in my district. And I went to CD3 leadership. I said, I want to do this in association with CD3 because I was on a board. And he said, fine, just make me a commitment that you'll never talk about election issues. So that's where we were at that time. I could not, I mean, I said, okay, I'll do it. I agreed to it. And I said, fine. And now we do talk about election issues, which is not a bad segue into talking about, and for those of you outstate, I want you to hear what it's like here in Minnesota, because the exact same thing is going on in your state. You just haven't figured it out yet. Talk a little bit. Drew is in the Minnesota House of Representatives. He's new. He's a freshman, right? Freshman term.
Right.
So he's learning, and he parachuted in to a firefight. I mean, just like the most acrimonious fight that I've ever seen in our house. And I've never seen anything like it. There was a woman in the Senate. Well, I'm going to let you. I'm going to preface it. There was a woman in the Senate that got caught. Allegedly, she's under indictment for burglarizing a house. Democrat. She's still serving in the Senate. And it's tied, I think, right? Or are they up by one?
It's tied.
It's tied. The Senate is tied.
Well, yes. I think they just had an election the other day.
Right. They filled that in. They tied that. That was that 90-10 thing over by the university. And in the House, I'm going to let you talk about the House because that's where you sit. You got to get your mind wrapped around this story could be a movie. Please proceed.
Yeah. So fast forward. I said 2020 is when I got involved. Fast forward to 2025, and I'm seeing the exact same thing go down. Tyranny. Flat out tyranny. We came into this election, and we within the House, and Minnesota was in the House. We didn't have control, the Republicans, in years past, right? Democrats ran roughshod.
It was all Democrat.
They had trifecta control. They had the House, they had the Senate, they had the governor. Going into this election, we, on election night, had flipped the House, right? We had won a seat, and we got the majority. Funny. One of our members had won. Aaron Paul was deemed the winner in 54A. In the middle of the night, he was deemed the loser. They miraculously found ballots. And when they reposted the numbers, he went from being up by 300 votes and declared the winner to losing by 13 votes. Interesting. Then they went ahead and did a recount, right? Upon that recount, they found that there was 21 missing ballots. Thrown in the trash. Gone forever. And then he ended up being up by 14 votes. So upon the recount, he collected a vote, but they realized that they lost 21 ballots. That was argued in court. And the judiciary in Minnesota, which we can expand on, which is also overreaching its power, more tyranny. You see the kind of theme we got going on today?
The theme of tyranny, if we the people don't get involved in politics.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We got some elections coming up with Supreme Court judges, and we need to pay attention.
Well, we're gonna have a whole segment on the judiciary because right now we're all focused on the elected officials. In the meantime, as you found out in Minnesota, there's a lot of juice in the third branch of government.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, they recounted it. This got argued in court. The courts deemed that special election isn't needed. That Brad Tapke had won that race fair and square. Don't worry about the 21 ballots. Yeah. Oops.
Nothing to see here.
Oops. Sorry. It didn't matter. Those were Tapke votes anyways. We don't know that. We don't know that at all. That's never been proven.
Now, has this been appealed to the Supreme Court?
No, it has not been appealed to the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, the time frame on that has expired. So Aaron Paul cannot appeal to the Supreme Court. What he has now is he has the ability for the House of Representatives, my body that I sit on, to defend his right and to unseat Brad Tapke and to make sure that we have a special election in 54A. Democrats have sat here and controlled the narrative on their race, saying that the voters of 54A are being disenfranchised because Republicans are going to unseat Brad Tapke. The reality is the only voters in 54A that have been disenfranchised are the 21 voters whose ballots were thrown away. That's disenfranchising.
Now, how many
And
votes were cast about in this
I'm
district?
you'd have to maybe our producer could pull that
You
up.
know what? What was that district, please?
54A.
Tanner, see how many, if you can, in the last election, how many votes were cast in 54A, Minnesota?
So we call a special election. The gaslighting of the left is just absurd. And the right needs to just we need to fight. We can't let them continue to gaslight and astroturf and manipulate the narrative in the court of public opinion by not talking about it. When you go to court and only one side shows up, they win by default. So to sit here and say that we're losing in the court of public opinion on the Brad Tapke race is because we're not talking about it.